Welcome. My name is Matthew Battle. I'm the founder and the managing director of UK Property Forums. This is an addendum to last week's session, which was session 1 on the power of innovation and collaboration. So before we start, and I've got here with me Nick Paterson-Neild, who has joined us from Barton, Willmore, who's going to present his particular views on the subject. And the subject is, and it's a subject we didn't quite finish last week. We had a missing piece to the presentation, which is the power of innovation and collaboration. So before we start, let's just have a quick look at the question. Why is collaboration and innovation an essential part of the UK economy? And as we recover, restart and renew, how can the ARC and Thames Valley regions lead the growth of the UK knowledge economy? Big questions, but really, really relevant for this time. And actually, these particular regions, the ARC and the Thames Valley, are plumb in the middle of this particular dynamic for UK PLC. So, as I say, before we go on to Nick's presentation, a quick recap. Last week, we had Alistair Lomax from the ARC Universities Group, Emma Southwell-Sander from Harwell Campus, and Dr. David Prout from the University of Oxford. They all gave us their particular views, which was incredibly helpful and really, really interesting. So, but before we get Nick to present, just a quick thanks, and it is really important because we can't do these things without sponsors. Thanks to Barton Willmore, Stantec, Janssen's, and also to the final sponsor, which is Segro, to helping us with this event. So let's go on to the presentation now, and Nick can kick off the presentation and we can then have a quick Q&A afterwards. I'll just line up the slides. Nick, over to you.
Thanks, Matthew. Pleasure to be with you here today. This is my presentation on the power of innovation and collaboration. And as Matthew's indicated, the key question here on the first slide is why are these essential as part of the UK economy as we recover, restart and renew? How can the ARC and the Thames Valley region lead the recovery? So at no time in recent history has there ever been a greater need to support locations to deliver facilities for scientific discovery. That's the view of UXPA, the UK Science Park Association, back in March of this year. There was clearly a need for innovative businesses to be supported, and such activity is crucial to the success of the UK economy. And indeed, the need for face-to-face contact is very crucial in a whole range of industries. On the left of the slide there, you see the 5 foundations that from the UK industrial strategy. And of course, there are the ideas and there are the people which are at the core, but it's the business environment and the infrastructure in place which remains centrally critical, in my view, to the success of collaborative spaces, particularly those in the knowledge economy. And the European Cluster Collaboration Forum back in July of this year, in the midst of the pandemic, where we are learning new ways of working in terms of remoteness, but yet central to the question of collaboration is the need for physical presence and interaction for the key activities in their view of concentration, collaborative working, learning and socialization. So as we move forward, despite our new flexible ways, it will remain important for the need to sustain collaboration. What about policy support? We know there is a great deal of this through the UK industrial strategy, which all will be familiar with, and particularly focused on those areas of the economy where Britain can be a global leader in driving innovation and productivity. In terms of specifically the Oxford-Cambridge ARC, it's clear that through the recent OXLEP investment plan highlights that it's one of the 3 net contributors to the Exchequer. Oxfordshire will deliver economic growth, employment, supply chain growth and collaboration opportunities for the rest of the UK. It has a already world-class innovation ecosystem with a high concentration of global assets and strengths. Oxfordshire very much is exceptionally well positioned as part of the ARC to help to seek to power the development of new products and services in the UK to transform lives for the better. Further to the south, the within the Thames Valley area generally, Berkshire's economy is exceptionally strong, as we know. The GVA in 2017 was 37.8 billion, and the GVA valued per job £68,000. That's ranked second only to London. So the economic prowess is well known and well established. Berkshire itself has the highest concentration of foreign direct investment in all of the 38 LEP areas. And as we know, with significant infrastructure planned or in action across Oxfordshire and in Berkshire, the ingredients are very much present for the Thames Valley and the wider arc to lead the way into recovery. And also, actually, I think it's worth reflecting on some quite significant policy change which is coming our way, and heralded very much by the work done by the Policy Exchange at the beginning of this year. Very influential think tank, which has clearly informed government policy, which is emerging, and a focus for the planning system on a looser, what's been dubbed a binary zonal system, which is now being explored in the subsequent white paper that's been released, and a move towards, or a suggested move towards, the definitive set of rules and standards which detail what kind of development might occur and what might not be acceptable in particular areas. That has led now, as we know, to the current consultation on planning for the future, the government's white paper. And within there is quite explicit support and recognition of the knowledge economy and innovation and collaboration. And there is a need to support businesses in terms of the commercial space and access to that in the places that they need, and the labour that they need to support their business growth flexibly. And then specifically guidance coming through the white paper, looking at innovation and entrepreneurship, businesses that will benefit from a planning system which is more responsive to the changing economy. And as we know, innovation space and the knowledge economy is at the forefront of economic activity and growth, and often pioneering work into new areas of business which have not been envisaged in the past. The planning system has often been slow to react and respond and acknowledge the way that business and activity is changing. The use classes order has recently gone through probably its most substantial change since the 1980s, when of course the internet didn't even exist. So things move on apace, and the planning system needs to acknowledge and keep up with that flexibility. But there is real support there through the government for encouraging spin-out opportunities, particularly near research-intensive universities. Central to the government's new proposals for the planning system is the concept of growth areas, and the idea that, and the concept that one can secure a permission effectively through an allocation in a plan, which becomes a planning permission akin to an outline permission. Whilst there be a need for a technical consent to follow, it creates a default presumption to support an area for substantial growth. And there is, again, very explicit recognition that proposals for such sites could be those around universities, where there'll be opportunities for clusters of growth-focused businesses. So quite an interesting opportunity for this activity. And what the government is suggesting now is the move towards new local plans, which are very lean, very modest in scale, taking it back to the core essentials, to take advantage of opportunities for economic growth. There is a lot in there, of course, about the housing debate, but throughout the documentation, there is a recognition that we need to support commercial space for new companies and high productive businesses. And in essence, we're now looking to a system where you have a plan which precisely and concisely identifies areas for substantial change and growth. That could be a science park or some other economic cluster, often around an urban neighbourhood. And the concept now coming forward of a mix of uses, which has long been advocated by the development industry, but the concept very much of an innovation district, which is really a shift away from sort of monoculture research parks and campuses towards bringing technology startups and other creative industries together with areas where people will live and have further physical and social interaction, and those supporting and celebrating those casual collisions, as they're known, which can support further activity and innovation and interaction and new knowledge transfer. Following this new opportunity to create or to benefit from a permission through the allocation in a local plan, there would then be a detailed consent route to follow. But what's interesting here is that there are a number of approaches suggested by the government. These aren't necessarily new. We're talking about reserve matters being potentially reformed, an LDO or local development order. We've seen those in practice. Milton Park and Didcot is a good example of this. A forerunner, to LDOs is simplified planning zones. We've seen that in action at Slough Trading Estate for many years. And the development consent order process, which at the moment is limited to the national infrastructure projects. The government is suggesting or contemplating a move to expand those provisions to look at areas for substantial growth, whether that's new settlement or other opportunities for economic related development. But Willmore's recently been involved in some work that you see there in the picture, suggesting that the DCO route could be utilised for further benefit. So very much the opportunity ahead in concluding this short presentation is that we are looking at a reform planning system which is coming our way, legislation next year and beyond, and other policy changes afoot. There is a real clear opportunity and a benefit here for startup companies, a more flexible approach to the way land and use classes for land is defined, an opportunity for businesses to create space which can transcend the former restrictions imposed by the planning legislation and actually be more responsive and dynamic. And I think that's what businesses are crying out for, is an opportunity to enable them to strive forward and create new opportunities for development. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. And hopefully you can still see us there, and we are socially distanced. Could you, that's really, really helpful and something we were really missing last week. It seems to me the new planning reforms are a leap of faith. Are you hopeful that they might or they will answer some of the issues which you've raised today?
I think there's an opportunity. There is a lot of detail to come. There is no doubt. There's a lot of commentary clearly from observers and people within the development industry looking at the potential opportunities and benefits. I think there are many good ideas in the proposed legislation, but it's about getting the detail right and making sure it's applied. It's about resourcing local authorities and supporting them in order to enable them to move towards a new way of working in some respects. There's clearly an emphasis on front-loading the preparation of plans which can shape and determine where significant growth opportunities should occur. But I think there's a recognition in government, and it needs to be set out clearly in legislation, to ensure that we are more responsive and creating the most flexible economy to support economic growth, which clearly the country needs going forward. Okay,
that's very interesting. Just looking, you talked about the detail, and I can't agree more. You used the word district, and these idea of casual collisions, which sounds dangerous, but I'm sure they're not in reality. I'm sure they'll all metaphorical. That's good. But could you just define, because I think this idea of an innovation district is something the Arc and the Thames Valley could do really well. What could you a bit more detail, and do you have any examples of where this has successfully happened elsewhere?
Well, indeed, I think the project that I've been working on for some time, Thames Valley Science Park, University of Reading, the concept there from the beginning was to move away from what was perhaps dubbed sort of an atomized business park, where there are a series of pavilion-based buildings where people may go to that building, go about their daily business, but not necessarily interact with people from other companies. Whereas actually the design concept was to create something more akin to a street, something more akin to perhaps a campus type environment that we're more familiar with in an education context, where different activities and different occupiers are brought together. There may be core facilities that are complementary to those individual businesses. Whether they're individual multi-let buildings or tenants within an entire building, the concept remains that if you want to try and create interaction, bring those people together, because it's the interactions between different sectors which can actually lead to a step change in innovation.
I mean, that's quite interesting, because obviously within a campus environment, educational, it's kind of a natural process, but what we're talking about is a step change where this would happen with a commercial or business environment. Is that correct?
Well, indeed, I think many commercial enterprises are already moving forward in this way in terms of research and development. There's a growing recognition of the complexity of bringing products to market and the need to involve other areas of specialisms to enable companies with core expertise to work together with others to actually create the right types of innovations and new products to respond to the market. So working together in ever more dynamic and changing economic situations, I think is essential going forward.
I mean, what's interesting is last week, David Prout talked about Begbroke to the north of Oxford, which is an extension of the university and what they're trying to achieve there. But you could argue, as Emma did at Harwell campus, some of these issues are already issues being a district. It is very much within that, and to a certain extent Milton Park as well. So I think there are some examples there, if I might say, and also of these districts. But it seems to be a really important discussion to go to the next level and to shape it. This idea, I mentioned about universities. How key are universities, Nick, to this debate?
I think they're very important. They clearly have a very significant economic footprint in their own right. University of Reading alone, I think there's some research out there that suggests 1 in 27 jobs in the Reading and Woking area can be traced back to the university itself. So we know they're quite important as employers, as obviously attractors of researchers and other economic activity that flows around them. But of course, they're not necessarily the only ways and the only format for clusters to be successful. There are many other examples where universities are not necessarily present or adjacent, and they can be led by industry. So there's not necessarily one size fits all, but clearly the universities have a very important role in the crossover and interface through particularly spin-outs from academic research as they become commercialised.
And it's interesting as well, talking about Thames Valley Science Park, there's been a number of announcements about new studios there and other sort of more entertainment visual, and there seems like a cluster. And again, that word cluster seems to have come up 2 or 3 times in your conversation, and you referenced it, and it came up last week as well. What do you define as a cluster in a planning term, and how important is it?
Well, a cluster in a sense is obviously a collection of organisations creating economic activity, but the way in which I would use the term is to highlight a series of related businesses, and they could be across a number of different sectors, but perhaps thematic. And the creative industries is the example that you just referred to at Thames Valley Science Park, which is emerging, and it's quite an exciting opportunity. It's an area of UK industry which the UK is very much a world leader in film and TV production. There's so many skills based in this country and has been for many years. So there's a real demand for creative media content, particularly through a number of new operators through internet providers particularly. So it's a big growth area. It's an area the UK can excel at. And so it's just one example of industries which will benefit from collaborative environments where like-minded organisations can flourish.
Final question, infrastructure. You mentioned it a couple of times at the beginning of the discussion. How important, in a purest sense, is infrastructure in the sense of transport?
It's vital at all levels, whether that's digital infrastructure, which is ever increasingly more important, but also the hard physical infrastructure, transport and so on. And the Thames Valley is benefiting now from significant investment in rail, but also road improvements which are taking place. But it's the whole package really of investment, and not just roads, but of course public transport provision, which perhaps in the past has been a constraint, particularly in the Berkshire context. So we need to find innovative ways to ensure people can get to their places of work and where they live. Flexible working obviously will play its part in helping to offset peak demand perhaps, and a more even utilisation of the transport network. That will remain to be seen how that plays out in the months and the years to come. But infrastructure, of course, remains centrally important to the success of space. Okay,
brilliant. I was going to wrap up. Is there anything else you want to add or subtract? Or forever hold your peace?
I think that's probably covered the territory and the ground that we wanted to go through. But I think what is clear to me, and I think back to the question that you posed at the outset, that innovation is vitally important as we do recover and grow as an economy. And the area of Berkshire and Oxfordshire and the Arc is very much at the heart of that. It's very much a driving force in the UK economy, and we need to find the right policy context and framework to support that growth potential, which will benefit the whole of the UK.
Nick, thank you very much. Thank you for your patience putting this together, and for the use of your offices. And we shall upload this to the system and send it to everybody who attended last week. So once again, many thanks, Nick, and to Barton Willmore. Fascinating subject. It really is at the core of what we're trying to talk about in the ARC of the Thames Valley, and a lot of the work we're doing at UK Property Forums is providing a platform to encourage debate about these issues, which are some of them quite raw and very different, and also not seen in many other places in the world. So very exciting in many respects. Once again, many thanks, and thank you for watching this, and we will be in touch with new information about UK Property Forums soon. Thank you.